that process. So we're underway. So this will be recorded and circulated by, I want to say, Wednesday, depending on the upload speeds onto our YouTube channel with my lack of fibre optic internet. So that should be out on Wednesday. We'll get that sent out via email along with the slide deck for you as well. If you drop out at any stage, just rejoin the meeting via the link that you've been sent in the email already, and that will allow you to join straight away. For those of you that sat in the lobby prior to coming into the meeting, that's been disabled, so you will come straight back in without that delay of having to wait. So the meeting is going to be split into two parts. Very brief outline of how CORE is going to work this season to start with, followed by a session which Martin will lead on for the majority. Sort of around working on club marks, understanding how clubs do mark match officials. And we'll come into a bit more detail later on where that's coming from and how we've come to that as a main first topic, really. So CORE this year has been included within level 3s, level 4s, level 5 to 4 candidates, and then level 3 W to 2W on the female pathway as well. So quite a very select group of match officials. We've deliberately done that this year to ensure that the content we're delivering is appropriate for every person on the session, as opposed to last year we possibly stretched out the content across too many levels and maybe overcomplicated the nature more than we needed to. So a very fine group of individuals here with us, all working off a similar hymn sheet, all working off a similar criteria, where we can hopefully aid that progression up to your next 2B, your level 3 and your level 4 from there, and your 2W pathway as well, with that focus being on preparing for that progression. Each and every one of you has been assigned a coach, except Will, because I'm still working on one from Leicestershire for him, but we'll have one sorted shortly. The idea behind that is for you to link up, share areas for your development, highlight those areas that you may need to develop from, how are you going to go about it, as well as what can you do to progress and ensure that perhaps an area in your game doesn't reoccur later down the line and have an impact further along. Ultimately, though, all the coaches that have been assigned to you are referees that have a great deal of experience, a great deal of knowledge, and will help you prepare as best they can and as best you can for that promotion up to the next level. I think only about 3 or 4 coaches are working on a 2-to-1 basis, so 2 referees to 1 coach. The majority of you have got a 1-to-1 relationship there with your coach, so use them as much as you possibly can. They've all offered to give up as much time as they possibly can to help and support you. I'm probably dropping a few coaches in it there. Where possible, they will come out and watch you and offer that support and guidance as well, but that isn't a straightforward priority because a lot of the coaches are still active in terms of refereeing themselves, observing or other areas of work. Where we do have midweek football coming in eventually at some point, and I imagine there'll be a bit of a reshuffle due to the last month that we've lost. We've had that conversation already, and we'll try and prioritise the level 5s to 4s with midweek football to allow you to get those games and get the coaches to come out and support you on those games and offer that guidance. Ultimately, though, it's all well and good having these coaches assigned and these sessions being put on for you, but if you don't engage, you're going to get nothing from it. And if we're noticing that there's a lack of engagement with the coaches and a lack of engagement with the sessions, unless we've sort of spoke previously and we've got an understanding there already, then unfortunately we'll look to remove you because we do have a massive list of individuals that would benefit from this type of development. So last year we were a bit more relaxed. We were a bit more trying to feed in, trying to understand how to work it best. This year, if we find that you're not really engaging with that coach, then we may look to remove you from that sort of environment and bring in someone back into that coaching aspect that would benefit from it and would utilise it how it should be utilised. In terms of the meetings, we're going to work on a bi-monthly basis. Again, last year we tried monthly and it possibly was too much. This year, bi-monthly, all virtual, which allows you to do it from the comfort of your own home in the warmth. Last year, obviously, we had the benefit of an outdoor practical aspect, which was really useful. But obviously, with the current climate, that isn't as practical and as feasible for us to do. So there'll be a lot of virtual aspects to it. A lot of content we'll send out for you to implement in a live environment yourself, for you to sort of develop and progress further from there. With those alternate months, we'll have our majority CPDs that will be ran to our whole referee workforce. So as you've seen, our majority referee CPD in December is Neil Hare delivering a session on managing difficult players and managers. So that'll be something for you to engage with as well. As well, alongside that, there'll also be some pre-recorded content released on a monthly basis that we've started planning, and they'll be coming out from the 1st of December on the 1st of each month. So some months or every month you have at least 2 items of development for you to work on, whether it's a case of the select core session, the majority session, and then the pre-recorded sessions as well. Alongside that, and some of you will see, and I'll touch a bit more upon that later, we've also set up a private Cams Call Facebook group where there'll be a plethora of content released into that as well, with open discussion from the coaches, from ourselves, and from yourselves as well. And that can be utilised and used as much or as little as possible. But the idea is that we get content on there on a regular basis for you to engage with, discuss, share ideas, share things that happen in your game that might be useful for the people. Similar to the Hive aspect that we've used previously, but unfortunately we've lost access to Hive as the Football Association. So Facebook was our next best bet with that, and there'll be more details on that later on. So moving on now really to the main area for tonight, and sort of looking at how we can develop our club marks, how our club marks can improve, any areas that we are working on or doing at present that may be limiting our progress on that aspect. This has predominantly been brought about as there appears to be a bit of a trend, particularly highlighted last year, with difficulty in achieving those club marks for progression of the next level. And I think for the level 4s in the group that were level 4s for the last couple of years, I think you'll probably feel the similar that there's an area for development there that we can do as match officials, and we'll come on to how we can understand that from there. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at the purpose of looking at this topic, what we do at the moment as referees, both the pros, the negatives, areas for development, and even things you possibly don't even think about naturally and come to do on a match day. We'll understand who we're going to be communicating with in terms of that club secretary. We'll then take apart the controllables and the uncontrollables of those areas and understand what we can actually do and what we can change and what we can sort of turn from an uncontrollable aspect into something that we can take control of and have an impact on our game. But also we've got some views of a couple of local secretaries from clubs that me and Martin discussed with last week to understand what they do when they mark a referee, what do they take into consideration, what are their biggest bugbears, what can we do that would help them understand situations better and overall improve that mark, so that we've got an understanding when we go into our games of what we're going to do. The majority of the time, we will see the same club secretaries on a regular basis. I'm sure you know the clubs that you've probably been to, possibly even twice already this season in sort of an 8-week season. You're going to be going there again. Let's build those relationships and let's understand where we're coming from, where they're coming from, and hopefully understand where we can pick up those extra club marks. Then we'll finalise on moving forward what we can do, what we've put into practice, and take away into our first games on the 5th and 6th of December, or the week after that as well. So I've pretty much covered all of that. Probably should have changed slides. So first question, which is an open floor, and I want you to discuss this. I want you to discuss with each other and share across to me, and the ideas that you've come across will upload onto the screen and onto the video. So what are your understanding at the moment of how clubs mark? What do you think they look for? What do you think they take into consideration? And the idea behind this is so that when we come onto that view of what clubs actually do consider, we have an understanding of what actually do we know and what is actually something that we shouldn't really be considering and has an impact that doesn't really have much of an impact. So just shout out ideas for me, unmute yourselves, get some discussion going. Martin, I'll let you lead this bit while I get some notes down on there. Anyone want to open the floor, or do we need to pick on someone?
Yeah, I will.
Fire away.
Approachability and answering for what's happened. Does that make sense? So, like, if you make a team
accountability.
Yeah. You know, if you do make a team activity, because as we know, whatever, like views, how we see things. So, like, sometimes you can just be 5 yards away, see something completely different to 8 yards away. and it's just answering their questions. If you come off and have no explanation why you've red carded a player which doesn't look like a red card from where they're standing, being able to go over there and say this happened, he had a straight leg, his studs were showing, he was off the floor, opposed to just going over there and going, it was a red card in my opinion. They can go, well, what defines it as a red card? That sort of thing. That's what I think they would think about. But,
Okay, perfect. Good start, Adam. Excellent. Thank you for that. Anyone next? Darren, I can see your mic's off.
Yeah, I can just say potentially the score, that could have an influence.
Yeah. So whether they've won, lost, drew, whether you've had an impact in that. Good. Next, anyone else?
Key match incidents that have gone up for or against.
Okay. Yeah.
Whether you've disciplined any of their players.
Good.
I think the counter to that one is actually if you don't caution when they're expecting it.
I'd also add whether or not you've been consistent from their viewpoint.
Sorry, say that one again, Chris.
Whether you've been consistent from their viewpoint, their rose-tinted glasses of how the game should have been reffed.
Yeah, good.
I wonder as well, Sam, whether sometimes clubs think there's like double standards, because sometimes they say we perhaps referee different when we're being observed to what we are when we're not. I think maybe clubs sometimes just on about it consistent as well. Maybe they just do want a bit of consistency or want us to, be refereeing the same regardless of whether there's an assessor there or not.
Good. If I can spell, that'll be useful. Yeah, good point, Ian.
I think body language comes into it as well. Whether you're kind of looking interested in the game or not.
Good. Good ideas so far. Any coming out?
I think
There's also a subconscious thing, right? And what's their general impression of you when they look back without taking into anything into account specifically when they say, did the referee have a good game, yes or no?
Yeah. So an overall view of the game almost.
Yeah. Which they might not even really sort of rationalise in terms of all the things we've talked about.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, they might just think, yeah, that's a standard performance compared to the referees we've had this season, or a good performance, or not so good.
The past.
I think that starts when you get to the game and then finishes when you leave the game. So it's not just on the green bit.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say the exact same thing. It's sometimes what we do off the field of play as well. So it could be the team sheet exchange in terms of, how we're conducting ourselves there, how we are maybe afterwards in the boardroom as well. Are we coming across as maybe a bit arrogant? I feel that's what probably one of the biggest complaints you hear about clubs is, when they have a referee they deem as being arrogant.
Linking into that then, if a club feels a referee's being arrogant, how can that come across? Because referees probably aren't arrogant the majority of the time, but how can a level of arrogance sort of have that impact and that impression?
Probably being overconfident, maybe. There's kind of, we may be seen as being confident, but they may see it being arrogant, maybe.
Yeah, definitely.
There's also the thing around referees not wanting to explain the decision because they don't want to elongate the argument. The clubs take that as the referee being arrogant and not wanting to talk down, kind of condescension type stuff. And it's difficult to draw a line there between you don't want to have a full blow by blow of every incident on the game, but at the same time appease them on the key things.
Yeah, good.
Who said past? Someone said past.
Oh, that was me. Yeah.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that, Jamie?
So, and I'm quite willing to give a personal example on this. I was at March versus Soham a few weeks ago, and they wrote me up after the game with a low mark, and one of the things that they mentioned to them among themselves, but within earshot of me, was, oh, he was waiting to get rid of that player because he'd done him last time.
Okay, so you're looking at past experiences and
yeah.
Events that have gone on.
Yeah. And actually, when I look back at my records, their recollection of what had happened previously wasn't even correct. So they thought I'd sent their player off in the past. I'd actually only cautioned him.
Perfect. So you made sure you sent him off this time, then, eh?
Apparently, yeah, definitely.
Can't spell conceived. There we go. Yeah, good. No, that can have an impact, definitely. Yeah. Anything else?
The previous experiences thing could work both ways, though, right? Because it could be he's terrible and he's always terrible, or he was awful last time and actually he's been okay this time, so we'll give him a good mark.
I mean, it does go both ways, but there's like, unconscious bias tends to work more in favour of negativity than positivity.
Unconscious bias. I like that. I can't spell it, but I like it. There we go. Yeah, good. In clubs viewpoint rather than in referees. Let me add that.
I think sometimes as well with clubs is just admitting sometimes when you're wrong, if you've made or you've missed something in a game or you've made a mistake, if they ask you about it afterwards, I think they know we're humans, and if we're willing to admit that we've made a mistake, the clubs are probably going to have some respect for us and probably take that into account as well. Really.
Okay. Yeah, understand. Yeah, a bit of an understanding from your point of view that you know what, I'm going to hold my hands up. I made a mistake. I'm going to be honest about it. Not going to change anything, but at the end of the day, I can't do any more than apologising. Yeah, no, good. We make mistakes. Sometimes it's just that ownership, isn't it?
Obviously, now with the furlough none, we're obviously having to send an email or whatever after the game to clubs in regards to their match report, how that comes across. So if it's just like obviously you don't want to obviously try to rub them up the wrong way or try and obviously too big of a brown nose with them, but how that email communication prior to and obviously now post game comes across.
Yeah, no, good.
Do we think, ladies and gents, that where you come from, a different county or travel distances has an impact?
No.
Do you mean like the extent of your fees and your expenses?
I'm thinking it could be fees and expenses, but it could be counties that you come from.
Yeah, I think that does have an impact, actually. I used to referee on the Wessex League when I lived in Southampton, and there was the big Southampton versus Portsmouth rivalry, which, we see in the football teams when they play each other, but actually it comes down to a much more local level. And there's quite a lot of things being like, oh, you're from Southampton, we're not going to get any decisions from you today, especially if they were playing like a team from that kind of location. So I think that's actually a really important point.
Okay, interesting.
And it's a point that's been highlighted in the sort of the season so far, because there's a kind of tendency to try and keep people more local because of COVID.
Yeah. So potentially, if you're going to somewhere like Histon and the opposition are coming in and they're saying, "Oh, where are you from?" and you go, 3 mile up the road, are they sort of seeing that as a local benefit almost?
I think sometimes the way that we kind of communicate with the clubs is actually quite an important one around and when. So not just the pre-match email and stuff like that, but things like doing the pitch inspection early and getting stuff in and not leaving it to the last minute to get them to rectify issues. Because especially now, I'm noticing that a lot of the clubs are even more skeleton crews than they had previous seasons. So it is now literally one bloke doing everything, or one person doing everything. So yeah, kind of overloading him with the goal nets need to be fixed or the lines need to be cleaned up or something like that.
Yeah.
Probably not going to put him in the best of moods.
Yeah, no, sort of, making sure you're not leaving everything to the last minute almost, and being prepared and sort of efficient with everything you do can be good, definitely. Any final points?
You can talk to the groundsman, because he'll have an influence in how you approach him and how helpful you are to him.
Yeah, Let's overall though, we sometimes look at the secretaries being the most important person, but you know what impact T person has or groundsman, like you say, and yeah, there's how do we react with them? Does that have an impact? Does that message get back to the person that's marking you?
When we said about physical presence with regards to your posture and how you approach and speak to people, I personally do believe that part of their judgment will go towards stuff you can't help. For instance, age. Maybe if your referee's too old or too young in their eyes, not experienced enough, or do you know what I mean? I believe that goes towards their marking.
Okay, interesting. Thank you for waking up, Matt.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, that can have an impact. I'm sort of going to throw, is it your first year? Does that have an impact? Does a club know it's your first game at that level? First time you've been to that ground? Have you had experience with that team before? Because we've sort of said there that sort of having that preconceived idea from a club's perspective because you've had them before and they know how you referee and they maybe didn't agree with certain decisions. Can you not knowing them and not seeing that secretary previously have an impact positively or negatively?
I think so. I think reputation has a lot to do with it. Yeah.
Smaller.
I think reputation to other clubs, because the clubs talk, the club secretaries talk, and they always talk about, oh, did you know we've had him this week? Did you know we had him last week? And the clubs talk, so they'll have a view of another club before you even get there, because they'll say, oh, Joe Smith is refereeing this week, and they'll talk to who they played for last week or who they refereed last week.
No, definitely, yeah. Like we hopefully talk to each other as referees to understand where clubs are coming from and what to expect. I'm sure, well, I know clubs do the same. So as much as we don't want to take into consideration, or them to take into consideration possibly last week's performance, they do so sometimes.
Can I throw in there how you talk to players? Because if you come across as being their best mate, the opposition are not going to like that.
I think we've talked about the club officials. How do we make them react to whatever? I think you've got to conduct yourself, speak to them all in the same way. You talk about the groundsmen, you talk about the players, you talk about the managers. Each secretaries will pick on some of them or all of those. So I think you've got to conduct yourself in a way that you can try your best to win them all over.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course you can.
For a bit of experience, my own personal opinion, being on both sides of it, is it across the white line, anything can happen with their attitudes, whether it be what you've done before the game, how you've chatted to them, the warm-up instructions, call it what you want. Cross that wide line, decisions you give at that point can say a lot as to what marks they're going to give you. That's my opinion.
No, that's definitely. You'd like to think that the majority of what they mark you on is based on your performance as a match official.
But to increase your mark, if you get all the decisions right and you've had this positive impact with everybody, you'll get a higher mark. If you get all the decisions right and you haven't carried yourself very well, you've been quite arrogant, as we said, you'll get a lower mark. It's human nature, I'm afraid.
Absolutely. I mean, you can give the clearest penalty in the world with 2 minutes to go and they lose 1-0. You know what's going to happen to your mark.
Still going to have an impact, isn't it, unfortunately?
Yeah. But
that's what linking a bit later on with those controllables and those uncontrollables.
As a referee, you can only do what you can do. What's outside your scope is up to them. But if you come off that pitch and you're happy with how you refereed the game, so be it.
Yeah, 100%. So, moving on, because there's loads of ideas there, which are really good, and some of those did come up in conversation with our secretaries earlier in the week. Thinking of those now and thinking sort of along those barriers, what do we currently, as within ourselves, do well as a referee? Let's look at the positives first, then we'll look at sort of what could we do slightly better. So, anyone want to brag about what they do well with clubs?
Buy a raffle
ticket. Let's. Good. Yeah, no, it can have an impact. It can have an influence on how they see you. could have if you're willing to put some of your match fee back into the club coffers, it could well do. They might forget that last minute penalty if they've lost 1-0 if you buy a raffle ticket. Jim, I've seen you raise your hand. Fire away.
Yeah, you can buy a raffle ticket, but don't win the prize.
Or give it back to the club if you do.
Yeah, good one.
Or give it to your observer if Jim's there.
Yeah, Jim, I was at Watton a few years ago, Watton FC in Norfolk, and I won their prize. And it was a week's holiday in Marrakesh or somewhere or other. But the prize didn't exist at the end of the day, and the bloke from Watton Golf Club gave me a week's holiday in Tenerife instead.
I need to go there more often.
Right.
Good. Anything else? What do we do well?
Being approachable to the clubs. So if they've got a problem or anything they want to discuss, always saying to them, the door's open, more than willing to have a chat with you. But just letting them know, obviously, there's not to come sort of barging in straight afterwards. But yeah, just being approachable to them, basically.
Yeah, no, good, Ian, perfect. Yeah, sort of linking into what Steve just said as well, winning the match, man of the match award. Is always useful as well, isn't it?
Still got the bottle of champagne as well.
Let them vent their frustrations from the week before.
Then vent.
Yeah, so if they want to speak to you and tell you how rubbish the ref was from the week before, just sort of in one ear and out the other ear, but that might make them feel a bit more comforting.
Yeah.
It seems to work sometimes.
Bit light-hearted, can't guarantee I'm going to be any better than he was last week or she was last week. Have a bit of a laugh with.
Yeah, but they will probably do the same talk about you the same way the next time to the next referee.
I'm not there. It's behind the back, so I can live with that.
Anything else we do well? This is the easy bit. Come on, what do we do well? It's going to get harder in a minute when we ask you what you don't do well. Let's get the good ideas out first.
Correspondence.
Yeah, good. The timely manner. And contents. Anything else?
If the club secretary comes in to talk to you afterwards and has something to say about your performance, that's actually quite good feedback. Even if it's biased feedback, it's someone's opinion on how you've done. So I think what I've tried to do recently is try and take actually show an interest in what they have to say rather than just to sort of letting them sort of talk at you and trying to defend yourself. Because at the end of the day, you can learn things from what they've got to say, even if you have to take some things with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, definitely, and sort of appreciating where they come from the angle they saw a decision, that can also have that impact because they probably see it as a bit more. You understand it. You've got a bit of a relationship there, then, and you can. Look, you're not always going to agree, but appreciate where they come from. Yeah, definitely.
I think showing empathy as well. It means just showing empathy towards maybe if they're not happy decisions go on their way or something. They're probably going to be more happy with you as well if they might not be happy with you, but if you're showing a level of empathy towards them, it's probably going to soften the blow a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anything else? Who's not said anything yet? Let's pick on people.
Sam, I've got one.
Go on, Darren.
Remembering things from the past times that you've been there. So if they've mentioned they get a caravan or they go here on holiday, ask if they've been or if they're going or how it was. Because then it just shows that you're human. You're not just there to have a conversation about football, although obviously they enjoy football.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I think moving on from that, Alan Young, when he was a level 4, he used to have what he called his black book. So every time he went to a ground and the club secretary mentioned, he had an interest in horse racing or, where he'd been on holiday or anything like that, he used to write it in the book. So then when he went back again, like Darren said, just mention it back to him again, which sort of probably boosts your club marks a bit because they're thinking, oh, this referee, he's got a good memory or he's showed an interest in what we've said.
Yeah.
Yeah, can that not backfire with you with the other team though? If you don't have the same knowledge of the other side,
well, that's your opportunity.
Not make you look a little bit over familiar.
Get that rapport going with them, Jamie. That's your opportunity to try and have a conversation with them and try and get some information that you can then sort of add to it really for the next time you see that club.
I think clubs understand the fact that if you've not seen them before, and you live locally to an area, that you're going to have seen them and you're going to have no interest about them. As long as you take the time to gather those interests from them as well and have that conversation with them, I think that's a good thing, because they can, like Ian said, you're showing an interest. You're not just there for football, you're there for having that conversation as well, and building those relationships, because you don't know the next time you might see that club.
General knowledge of the league. Okay. Like results. I saw you won, whatever, you know, relate back to them saying, oh, they got a decent side. I saw he went from Simon to Ely, whatever it may be.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I suppose the last thing you want to do is rock up to a great game and ask the secretary as soon as you walk in, oh, how's your season going? You're doing well. And he turns around and goes, well, actually, mate, we've lost every game this season. We've conceded 300 goals. You don't know what you're talking about, sort of thing. You've sort of lost them straight away there before you even start by not doing your homework.
What the issue is.
Say that again, Adam, sorry.
Like you said, if they most like a whiz pitch to say how many games you've won this season, it's probably not going to go down very well.
Yeah, no, exactly. So it's knowing your audience a little bit, isn't it? And knowing who you're going to be speaking to and where you come from. That's the worst thing you could possibly say to a team that's not having the greatest of seasons in their eyes and can put you on a back burner straight away. Any other positives before we move on to areas to develop? Gav, go on.
Yeah, respect their facilities. You know, don't leave the dressing room in a massive mess, or clean your boots in the shower.
Hey, that was what someone used to do a lot. I remember those days. Is he still about?
It's simple things like just if there's a brush there, brush up after yourselves. It's something that won't take a lot of time, but could have quite a big impact, actually. And you see it all over Facebook at times when clubs look after the away changing rooms and how much of a positive impact that can have. I know it's only a much smaller changing room, but it can still have a big impact if the referee 2 weeks ago didn't do it and cleaned their boots in the shower and made a mess of the facility. Straight away, you're on an upper foot there.
Moving on to that is hospitality. If the club's offering you hospitality, take it up. Or if you know in advance that you're not going to be able to stay, just dropping them an email and telling them, because I think there's nothing worse for clubs when they've gone to they've took the time to prepare some food for you, and then you're just clearing straight off. I know obviously at the moment with COVID it's not really relevant, but when it is, there's nothing worse for clubs. That's one of the things that they're probably going to complain about the next week. Oh, the referees, never stay for the food. All this food's gone to waste.
Yeah, definitely.
I think
yeah,
to follow on from that, just to follow on from that, at the moment, at least say goodbye. Just leave the ground on a positive note. Say goodbye.
Yeah, it's easy at the moment to just pick up your bags at the end of the game and clear straight off, isn't it? It's trying to take time out of your day and try and find them. Just say, look, we're off now. Any issues, give us a call or answer any questions they might have there and then. Can be good. Good. Tom,
on the thing of saying goodbye, if you then can wish the away team a safe journey home, so you're not always concentrating, as we've said before, concentrating on the home team. You've got the away side. Wish them a safe journey, especially if you know it's been a long distance.
Yeah, of course.
It gives you something more to talk about with the away side, which is often not as much as the home side.
Definitely, and particularly if that might be the only time you've seen them in a year or whatever. It's something as simple as that could have that impact as well. Good.
Another thing as well, maybe communication with clubs, or this time of year with pitch inspections. If you're doing the club a favour in terms of they need a referee to do a pitch inspection, if you look at the weather beforehand, perhaps the weather's going to be looking a bit dodgy ahead of the weekend. When they're confirming the game with you, and say, look, if you need a referee for a pitch inspection, I'm more than happy to be there to do it for you. Providing it's to a ground that's fairly close or whatever. But just by giving them that option, it's going to do you a favour with the clubs, really.
Yeah, definitely. And again, puts you back in that positive mindset of them because you're being proactive.
I think your own presentation at the game. I know it sounds crazy, but what you're wearing can have an impact, can have an influence on people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good. Right. What I'm going to do is we'll leave that one there. Now, probably a slightly harder question to answer, but without even sort of thinking and knowing what clubs look at the moment, what do we think we could do better? Is there anyone that is open to share some things that they don't necessarily do well that they're prepared to develop and progress with? I know no one likes putting themselves down at all, but
I've got one.
Okay.
One that, for me, I think it's received such mixed feedback in the past, but I'm sure if you know, I'm a ref that will just talk and explain every decision, like kind of as a rugby ref as I go along.
Yeah.
And at times that can be really beneficial, and other times, if it's a club where it's kind of like not me deliberately rubbing salt in the wounds, but if they're kind of hearing decisions and decisions are going against that team quite often because they're getting riled up and they're putting in too many heavy challenges, just hearing almost too much explaining of decisions.
Yeah. No. Interesting one.
Well, that's a bit like the old same as using a whistle. Less is more. You can be talking all day to them. It doesn't really mean as much as it does if you only talk to them for a little or briefly. Same as blowing your whistle. If you blow your whistle a lot, doesn't have as much effect as maybe not blowing it as much.
No, 100%. 100%.
What about communication?
It is. I think with that, it's knowing the clubs as well, and obviously the better relationships you have with those clubs, the more you see them, you'll know which ones appreciate and need that closer man management and that closer communication compared to those that don't want to listen to you at all.
Yeah.
And it's in those precise environments to ensure that you're targeting the right people.
Yeah, that's true.
And players. Anyone else?
Don't be too much of a technical referee.
Yes, let's be able to manage situations as well. Good.
Linking into that, Sam, not showing enough empathy for the game.
Or situations as well. Let's add that in there. Yeah, good. Anything else? See, Ian's mic keeps flickering on and off.
Yeah, don't defend the undefendable.
Good. Any additional areas?
Think about the last 15 minutes or last 10 minutes of the game. Is that decision something which you can sort of get away with, manage, or obviously is it, especially if it's a caution, like does it have to happen? Because clubs will remember that.
Easy, Tiger. If it's a caution, it's a caution. Doesn't matter.
No, see, that's where I get let down. Too technical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's the first minute or the 90 minutes. If it deserves a caution, it should get one.
Yeah.
If we're talking about clubs, then it's a different story.
It's an interesting conversation. It is an interesting conversation because an expected caution is an expected caution. But in those last 10, 15 minutes, are we able, is our mental fatigue, our mental fitness there? Are our legs still there? Are we still with play to give those decisions accurately? Not necessarily just focus on, is that a yellow, is it a red? Are we all with play? Are we still in the same position in ourselves where we've been for the previous 80 minutes?
I suppose it depends on how many cautions, if any, you've had before that. That's the only thing I'll say is if you haven't had any, then it might be. If you've had 4 or 5 and you come to the last 5 minutes, different matter.
Call it consistency, shall we? And let's link it to that, ensuring that because that last 10, 15 minutes is the time they're probably going to remember the most. And if we don't give a caution or we give a caution that we haven't done earlier in the game, does that change their viewpoint and change how they see it? Possibly.
That's where you're kind of managing conflicting priorities as well, isn't it? Because it's all well and good for us to say amongst ourselves as a group of referees, a caution's a caution, whether it's a first minute or 90th minute. But and like if you're talking about managing your club marks, that bar moves slightly depending on whether it's in like the first 15 or the last 15, and it's at a point in the game when people are going to remember it, versus when you're being observed and that observer is looking at that match through the same lens for the full 90 minutes, and the standard is the standard no matter where you are.
So just to throw in and back into that, Jamie, if we have a caution in the last 15 minutes that we decide to manage, but the opposition sees that as a mandatory caution you're not given, Are you improving one to lower the other? Possibly.
I mean, again, I think that with unconscious bias, that tends to work more in the negative than in the positive. You're far more likely to be forgiven for not doing something than for doing something you probably should have done, but people disagree with.
Okay.
I think we could be guilty of overcomplicating things as well, Sam. I think consistency is the biggest thing. If a referee gives consistent decisions throughout the 90 minutes, forget the last 15 minutes, forget the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
All the other things of showing empathy and listening to them, you'll be able to explain that away. I'd rather be explaining consistency than inconsistency.
Definitely. I think it's always easier with the clubs to explain that consistency than try and defend a caution that you've not given
Correct.
previously earlier in the game. 100%.
I think your last 10 to 15 minutes also is kind of set up by the rest of the game, right? There's no point suddenly slacking off in the last 10 to 15 minutes. Because sometimes the best games I've done have been where you've ended up and you've had 3 cautions in the first half and you thought, what the hell's going on here? And actually, because you've done that, you've set out a kind of level that means that stuff doesn't happen later in the game when people do remember it. Because people do remember the kind of impression they've got from the end of the game rather than the beginning.
I think just to follow up on that, set them up. Use your public warnings. Use your public. Getting the players in. Make a big show of it to say that if you are going to make another challenge, it's a caution. And then clubs expect that they know it's coming and they can see you've tried to kind of prevent it, but it's not that the players are not reacting.
Yeah, at least then if you do need it. And need to use that. You've done it. You've set them up. You've done it public. Everyone can see that. Look, he's an idiot.
You could almost give an apologetic yellow card, can't you? In the last 10 minutes, you could say, "Sorry, lads, I can't do anything else." Yellow card. It's still a yellow card.
Think about how the game looks to both teams. If one's had 10 fouls against them, whether they're correct fouls or incorrect fouls, if one team's had 10 and one team's had none, perhaps just try and look for a softer one. Not saying a penalty or something like that. Just find an excuse to give them something to make them feel like it's not a one-way street.
Can that fall into breaking that consistency barrier though, potentially?
Yeah. I mean,
and overcomplicating.
I think if you give them 3 kicks in a row, the chances are one of them is going to be soft. So you could argue that you could give one that's of similar consistency to the other team.
Communicate your decisions better.
But not too much.
No. Not overcomplicate it when you're giving your communications.
Yeah, definitely. Be precise, straight to the point, but polite at the same time. Sorry, Gav.
Another one. If you're managing the players that are constantly, shouting for a foul, shouting for this, shouting for that. Perception is if they're constantly doing it and you're reacting to it, giving them a foul because it probably is. The clubs are going to kind of pick up on that and kind of suggest that you're just going on the call, on the shout. But if we can better manage that as it's happening.
If they're a good scorer, they'll know whether that should or shouldn't be a foul. What they should be judging you on is how you're dealing with the player, person to person. There's so much subject to these things, and every circumstance is different, isn't it? It's never easy.
But it's about perception. If the perception is you're going on the call, then all of a sudden you've got no authority in the game, and therefore they've lost your respect.
But it might not be perception. They might think, yeah, that's a foul, but they do think that the player calling for it is a twat. Use my language. So they might be thinking, yeah, he's given the foul rightly against us. But I wish the referee would deal with that player better. Tell him to shut up. Yes. You could be right. It could be on. They could think it's on the call. There's lots of ifs and coulds and buts.
Yeah, I think you're kind of going along the lines of stamping your authority on the game, making sure that everybody knows that you're the man in charge and you're making the decisions.
Moving on from managing players, is also managing technical areas as well. What are you doing if you've got that manager that's sort of shouting and bawling across the field of play? management all around, really.
Good. I think sort of thinking it's kind of what Joe was saying a little bit there is as well. We could be trying to manage that situation, but are we giving that perception that we are actually managing that player, or are they seeing it literally as, well, that player's running the show? It's giving that perception from yourself that you are in control of that player and you're managing them to avoid any escalation of further situations. So again, it looks into how we're appearing body language wise and how we're dealing with players and that communication aspect. Are we overcomplicating it by trying to overmanage that player? Possibly.
The other thing,
go on, Tom.
The other thing with overcomplicating, and I'm definitely guilty of this a lot, is I don't think it ever really improves your performance when you're refereeing to spend any time during the game worrying about what the clubs think. So obviously, in general, we need to think about ways we can improve club marks, but I don't think it helps, like, in the moment to be going, well, hang on, will the clubs be cross with me if I do this caution or if I manage this or whatever?
No, interesting.
That's great. That's a good comment, because we need to be referees, don't we? We need to go out there and do our refereeing job and not think, what's everyone going to think if I do this refereeing job? You just got to do it. So I think that's quite a good key point there.
Yeah, and we'll touch upon a bit more of that later on in terms of what we do on the green stuff has to be the stuff that we do, and we've got to go into it with the viewpoint of we might upset a few people here, but it's how can we deal with stuff after the game or before the game, and how does other aspects come into it to help alleviate those issues, perhaps. Good. So, Martin, over to you.
Thank you.
We'll touch upon those other areas a little bit more later on, and we'll wrap up on those. But yeah, Martin will take on to the next section there.
So, as Sam said, we've spoke to 2 club secretaries in the local area in Cambridgeshire. They shared similar views with each other, and we spoke to them on 2 separate occasions on their own, and they give us an overview of how they mark referees, how they see the referee and mark process going, obviously with the criteria that they're set out by the FA as well. So the 2, I can just move on from that, Sam, please.
Yeah.
So we're going to look at understanding your audience. Now, understanding an audience, as in the club secretary, clubs, is a massive key skill that we can learn as match officials. So, Sam, if you can put up the them dates. So, a couple of minutes, just having a look and a think about them dates on the screen. What do those dates symbolise to you guys? And feel free to shout them out, and we'll try and take notes of what you think they symbolise.
Year I was born.
The age of the volunteer workforce of the clubs.
The year the last time the club won a trophy.
I wouldn't quite go and ask them what year they won a trophy. You might get a very honest response and a low club mark from that, Ian.
Isn't one of them the last time Steve Simons bought a drink?
Pounds, shillings and pence.
The year when they were founded as a club.
Okay. And any others?
No.
No. Okay. Right. So these. Sorry, go on.
The year the club was formed.
No. So what we've got here is we've got a vast range of years. Now these are some of the years that are the ages of the years of birth of the secretaries. So whoever said year of birth, whoever that was, shout it up their year of birth. You're on the right lines. They are the years that the secretaries were born. So just having a quick look over them, they are very vast for what the group we've got. So we'll come on to the next slide, Sam.
So linking into that as well, they're not just any secretaries. They're all the dates of birth of secretaries that each of our level 4s have seen this season. So they're not just random dates that we've plucked out of thin air. They are the people that you will be communicating with on a regular basis.
Yeah. Okay, so can anybody have a guess at the set of dates?
Our years of birth.
Okay, who said that?
Chris.
Chris. Yep, so you've hit the nail on the head straight away there. They are the group that we've got in Select Core. They are your years of birth. So you can just see there's more years of birth on there than there were the previous slide with the club secretaries. So
2002.
Makes you feel old, doesn't it? Even me. It's,
no comment. So this slide here is you've got the secretaries' ages, the groups' ages, and then if you go on to the next slide, Sam. So the club average will be the top one, and the referee's average is that. So you can see there's a massive difference between the club and the referee's age, date of birth. So this is what we're up against, and it's all about understanding your audience, understanding the club secretary, and how many more years of experience they've been. Over the two club secretaries we spoke to, there is 30 plus years of being involved and watching football. Now that's a lot of years of experience, and that doesn't get put aside. That all that experience of 30 plus years gets used when people in the clubs and secretaries look at you and mark you as a match official.
Sort of linking into that as well, obviously, we want to build those relationships with these club secretaries of these dates of births. Our interests are going to be massively different because of the generations that we're involved in, and sometimes it's about finding conversation that is relatable to that individual. So you look at one of these secretaries here who was born in 1946. They're nearly 80, if my maths is right. Yeah, my maths isn't right, but the idea is there. Understand what they've got, the experience they've got. Understand that the interests that you both have are different, but it's up to you as a match official to find those interests, to have that conversation, to build that relationship, so that next time you go along to that club, you've got something in common that you can talk about, and linking into how Gav was discussing earlier in terms of that little black book and understanding where did they go on holiday, how's the family, small things like that. And trying to find that common interest and that common ground.
Okay, slide. So, next one, Sam. I think we'll just put them all up, Sam, to be fair.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So as I said, spoke to both club secretaries in Cambridgeshire. They both shared a similar view to each other. They've been open and honest in their discussions. We sat on Teams meetings and we fired questions at them. And they give an open and honest response, and that's all we can ask for. And likewise on the flip side, we then, when we're having them discussions about decisions and interacting with players and different members of the club, we have to have that open and honest discussion, and we have to sometimes hold our hand up and say, yeah, okay, I got it wrong. You have to apologise and you move on. You have to learn from that, and obviously with the coaches that we've got in CAMS now, that we can progress them discussions and hopefully help you through it. So to understand the way that they mark, we got an understanding from them of how they mark referees, what factors affect a referee's mark. Thank you, Sam. Yeah, so what factors affect a referee's mark, and what do they appreciate and don't appreciate when they're actually looking at the whole process and they're actually engaging with you and looking at your performances on the field of play.
I fired them all up.
Yeah,
too far.
Too far. Right. So again, out of the conversations we've had with both secretaries, sometimes we have manager input, or they have manager input, should I say? But normally it's just secretary. You're looking. The manager will have a biased opinion, and it's mainly down to the decisions you make. But that will obviously be seen by the club secretary, hopefully. And the ones that we've spoke to, they tend to watch the games. They don't tend to do the team sheet exchange and then disappear off and do something else in the background. So they will actually watch the game. So they'll have an involvement and they'll have their own unbiased opinion or biased opinion, depending on who it is. The interesting thing that me and Sam found out, there was no training on the marking. There is only a guidance document published and issued by the FA. So that was a very, very important point that we felt we had to bring across to you guys who are going to meet these people week in, week out when we get back into normal swing of things. There is no formal training, it's guidance only. So it can sort of sway either side of that line. Highlights, a lot of people will have access to highlights and have ways of video and recording the games or clips. As people have been out with me before, I've said in my briefings that actually see if we can get on and have a look at the highlights of previous games or other incidents. So they will do the same thing. They will record their games and they will probably look over the footage if possible. Again, as they are club secretaries, they're going to be biased and will favour their team with the big decisions, the penalties, the red cards, the manager out of the dugout. It could be anything. They do try and stay neutral because they have to do a job and have to mark you with your whole performance, not just on individual aspects of your game. We did find out that from both secretaries, they appreciate a discussion after the game about a decision. So if someone not necessarily comes hammering on your door after the final whistle 2 or 3 minutes after, they give it the courteous 30 minutes, tap on the door, can we have a word, can I ask a question, then feel free, answer them as honestly and openly as possible. And they do appreciate that. They'd rather have an open, honest discussion rather than you have your hospitality, say thanks very much and off you go, and they're left wanting an answer and they haven't got it, or you're dismissive of them and you're not going to talk about it. That's not the way. We need to try and get you guys to build up a rapport and break down these barriers of that's black and white, that's what I've made, that's the decision I've made, that's what I'm happy with, I'm off, thanks very much. We need to get into that flow of having a conversation, but not over egg the fact that it's one-sided, whether it's your opinion or their opinion. It's got to be an equal split. So the referee can instigate the conversation. There's nothing wrong with you guys going to a club secretary and saying, everything all right for you out there today? Is there any questions you need answering? Always be approachable. And we've said that in previous slides and stuff. Not always up to the clubs to approach referees. They might not want to. They might be too busy. Think of the bigger picture of we've got the COVID situation now where limited staff on site in football clubs. There might be 5 or 6 jobs that secretary's got to do. And one of the last ones is he's got to see you before he goes. He might not get that chance. He or she might not get that chance. So try and make time. If you're offered into hospitality or there's some form of hospitality, just go and make yourself approachable and say, everything okay? Can I answer any questions that you have? I'm not going to say stay there for hours on end and chat to them, but please give them that opportunity. And I think that will gain you a lot of respect and a lot of hard work in the future when you go back and you go, actually, this guy's all right. He's offered to answer questions and stuff like that. So you'll pick up marks and you'll gain the respect. With that, the secretaries, they come away with a mark in their head. They'll watch the game. They'll have a whole thought process on your performance, how you've engaged, how they think you've come across with the managers, the players, etc. So they'll come away with a mark in their head. They'll then go away and they'll use the breakdown and the guidance issued by the FA to then come up with the mark for the referee. Depending on how that breakdown works, and I've not seen the guidance for a long time, so it all depends on how that breakdown is worked out and calculated through the guidance. Your mark will go up or down. So just bear that in mind. If you're close to an 80, 85 and you come away and you say something silly after your hospitality and you go, that's then going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. We did find out, and this was an interesting one, that when they have the highlights of the game, they record the game. They do send highlights of big decisions to referees that are familiar to them for an opinion. So a penalty shout, for instance, that's happened 2 games before, you actually turn up on the day, they will actually send that to a referee that's local to them, and they will go, what do you think about that? What's your opinion on it? If it happens in your game, you're probably unlucky, but they will have a rough idea of what you guys are thinking thought process wise to what the decision should be or could be. So that's an interesting thought. They will use highlights. We as referees and match officials should be using highlights. We should be doing our homework on clubs and on the games that we're refereeing as well. So the arrival and departure times doesn't really affect the process. Obviously, with the FA, you have a standard arrival time as per protocol, and the leaving time, departure time after your hospitality doesn't really affect the process. One secretary said, well, if he wants to have a drink in the bar afterwards and have a chat, and he's local, for instance, with obviously the COVID restrictions we've got, then happy days, is money over the bar, and he's not causing any issues. But the one caveat to that is, if you feel you're staying too long, don't overstay your welcome. Or if there's been a contentious decision, be polite, bit of hospitality, and away you go. But I leave that down to the individual referees and the individual team bosses, that you do what you want to do on game day, but just make you aware that overstaying your welcome might not be the best way to be. The only other thing with that is delays in leaving the change room. Obviously, clubs have to get tidied up. They want to shut down the club as soon as possible after the game, and this is just the more operational areas of the football club, change rooms, that kind of thing. Be mindful when you're doing your admin and you're engaging in your team and with your team. Just be mindful of, if you have an observer on the day, that you go, look, I've had this club before. Club secretary wants us to get in, out, done. He needs to get packed away. Can we be mindful on the time of debrief afterwards? Now, obviously, with myself, it happens over Zoom. It might be a similar fact, or you don't have a debrief. So just be mindful on that. I'm being observed. I'm going to referee differently. Now, that was one of the comments that came out from one of the secretaries, and I was quite alarmed at this. As Steve rightly said earlier, if it's a caution, it's a caution, whether it be the first minute or the 90th minute, 95th minute. We don't referee any differently. We referee to the best of our ability, week in, week out. If observers have different caveats to how they feel your performance should go, then that's up to them. They will then come back and put it in the report if necessary, or give you constructive, active advice on the day. But please don't leave yourself short of marks by club secretaries by going, oh, I'm being observed today, I've got a man in the stand, I'm going to referee differently. Does everything so far I've said make sense to you guys?
Oh, Jamie's got a question.
Just on that, obviously, we were talking about how technical you are earlier and things like that, and so one of the really simple rules that kind of can cause friction early in a game is sock tape. Okay. And so when you're trying to deal with the sock tape, and you've got a club with really garish socks or whatever, and they're like, well, can't get sock tape in this colour, and you might just take a pragmatic view, it's not really hurting anybody, let's get on with the game. But that's a cheap and easy way to lose observer marks if you are being observed. And obviously, if you are being observed, your observer marks matter far more to you on that day than your club marks do.
Yeah, you've got a point to a certain degree. The way that I would deal with it, and I know a lot of the coaches on the call and obviously colleagues that referee at a level 4 and have done for a little while, you would try and grasp the nettle and sort that out early. Either dedicate your assistants when they do the cursory checks to say, look, guys, we've got an observer today. I don't want to lose club marks. I don't want to lose easy observer marks. Get that sock tape sorted out. And if it takes a couple of minutes extra, go out a couple of minutes earlier and check them. But you as the referee, you as the boss in the middle, have got to grasp that and lead your team. So yes, you do have a point. You are going to lose potentially observer marks by not dealing with it, but you've got this very fine line of upsetting the clubs and the club secretaries by being too finicky about sock tape and stuff. But grasp it early. Get ahead of that.
Go on, Gav. You go first, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly what Martin said. You know, at the exchange of team sheets, try and get the information across there. You know, the rule is in place. It's been in place for everybody. You know, don't leave it until you're just about to run onto the field of play.
One of the things that did come out of these conversations with the secretaries is if there is a concern early doors, let them know early. They'd much rather have the time to be able to solve that issue, whether it be sock tape, undergarments. Goalkeeper top is a common one, where sometimes if they're not listed correctly on the team sheet, be proactive with those situations. Don't be afraid to poke your head around the changing room door when you get there and say, just want to make sure the goalkeeper tops aren't clashing, and what, are you wearing sock tape? What colour are your socks? Things like that. At the same time, though, bit of empathy with that if there's a situation that arises to that, and understand that and work around that as best you can, but be early to understand that first and then come to a discussion afterwards. At least then if there is something that is outside of your control a little bit, say if there is sock tape is garishly different to the socks, you could perhaps highlight the observer beforehand that, look, they've got an issue with sock tape. They're all going to wear the same. There might be an option around that. Ideally, you don't want them to do that, but as a worst case scenario, a bit of empathy with the club, prompt the observer beforehand and let them know the observers that we've got won't have too much of an issue with that as long as they're prepared for it and understand where you're coming from and can then understand the empathetic side behind that. Joe, I think you had your hand up next, and then I'll come on to Adam.
Yeah, you alluded to it a little bit towards the end there, but I have a different take on it compared to what Martin offered. What Martin offered is spot on and right as far as a referee is concerned. And if you want to manage the situation as best as you can and as early as you can, then great, do it. But my alternative, when it comes to what Jamie sort of pointed out, was I think it's a pick your battle situation. You could do the referee thing and get those observer marks, or you could do the not so referee thing and take a blind eye approach and allow the clubs to go out. In a situation like that, I would pick my battles in those sort of circumstances, and I might. There's nothing you can do about a player. There's nothing you can do about a player that cuts their sock in half. They haven't got a spare batch of socks from Sports Direct that's right next door to you, and in a situation like that, I would just say pick your battles. It's gonna annoy the club or the players or the manager, whomever it might be, who you don't want to annoy, to raise that with them. Doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter too much when. You could do it an hour before in an attempt to be as proactive as possible, but it's still going to be a bother to them. Oh, that's the referee poking his nose in, being a bit busy. They're still going to, in my opinion, they're still going to have that view of you. So I would probably just pick my battles and situations and less is more approach, and maybe not do it and just talk to the observer afterwards. Oh, they didn't abide by protocol, I'll just report it. Is what you could say. But it swings and roundabouts and opinions, isn't it?
Well, obviously, just to put a statistical kind of spin on that, if you referee 20 games in a season or whatever, then that one club represents 1/2 of 20 games, whereas you might only get observed 5 times. Your pool of observer marks is much smaller, and so a damaging observer mark is going to cost you far more than a damaging club mark on one game of 20.
Is there a way that we can do it without damaging both? I'll leave that with you. Adam, I'll come on to you first, and then I'll come on to Matt.
Yeah, I was going to ask more so from a line perspective. You were on about honesty and secretaries. Is honesty always the best policy in certain situations? Because I've been quite an odd situation this season where the ball went over the line to everyone bar the referee and the other linesman, and everyone thought and knew it was a goal, including myself. And he comes in, the secretary comes in, is asking the referee and the linesman what they've seen. They're both going, it's not gone over. And in my opinion, in that situation, it was my time to say, well, actually, I thought it had, to give him that sort of clarity. So it's honestly always the best policy, especially.
So with that example there, it depends on whether it's your credible environment to come in and discuss that. If you were the assistant referee who was away from that instance and wasn't in line, then particularly if it's a ball over the line situation, then if I was a referee and you shared that view in the changing rooms, that wouldn't be a view that would need to be shared, because that you're not credible to give that decision.
No.
And that conversation, a lot of the time, we'll touch upon this slightly later on. Secretaries would normally go through the referee to answer that question, and that's the downtime to have that conversation between the referee and the assistant before the secretary or the manager comes in to ask those questions.
It was quite a unique thing, but it hit the roof of the net. That's what it was. It's a very unique situation, and the referee didn't allow time for that to happen. But it was more with like red card, yellow card challenges and all about, where it's down to opinion. Coming from a referee's perspective, is honestly the best policy, saying I made a mistake and the lad's got his leg broken, something like that. Like,
if you're a lot of the time, the marks are with the referee, and the questions will be asked of the referee in that situation, and the referee is the leader of the team and is the spokesperson of that team. So, as an assistant referee, your view will be shared with the referee directly before the secretary comes in. If they're not, then leave that conversation to liaise between the referee and the secretary, because they're the individual in charge, and they're the individual that made that decision. It's their viewpoint that effectively matters within that conversation. Because by coming in and going against that referee, you could then be causing further issues in terms of club's relationship with that referee down the line. As an assistant referee, you're marked solely by the referee as well, so take that into consideration and keep those relationships between you two in the changing room, and let the referee be the spokesperson to those teams and discuss those incidents. Matt, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to go back to the point around the observer side of things. Just be proactive, that was all I was going to say. If you're proactive with communicating with the observer, communicating with the clubs, the cost of a mark over sock tape is nothing compared with the cost of what the reputation will be if you've caused a major fuss over something with the clubs on your club marks. There is nothing particularly major in any of the observation reports now which talks about sock tape, so it's a minor thing in the scheme of things compared with the rest of the game. So
I feel we're diverting slowly away from club marks and slowly onto how to manage sock tape situations. So Tom, you had your hand up, but you've taken it back down. Have you got anything else you want to add? Discuss, and then I'll come on to Ian.
You said it's fine.
It's fine, sorted. Ian, I can see you've got your hand up, George.
Yeah, it's just going back on what Adam said. If you're the senior assistant and you're bench side, your view of the game and decisions the referees make is 9 times out of 10 the same as what the benches see.
Yeah.
So don't defend what the referee does. Just say, look, we've seen both at the same angle. You've seen exactly the same as what I've seen. I'll discuss it with him at half time or at full time. Yeah. Just don't try and cover up what the referee's doing. If you're the senior assistant, you've got exactly the same view as the benches. So in terms of if you're involved or not, you've got the same view as them. So you just need to be honest with the benches, which will help you further on in your career when you're the man in the middle.
Yeah. And it's how you communicate that so that you can say that you'll have that conversation and come back to them, because obviously you don't want to say something untoward if it's coming into a key match situation, a penalty, a goal scoring opportunity, or so forth. Jack and Joe, you'll be the final two, and then we'll move on to the next section. Otherwise, we won't finish on time. Jack, I'll come to you first because you beat Joe to it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of as an assistant referee, it's the referees, right? So we don't want to overimpose ourselves. So in terms of offering our opinions, generally I just keep myself to myself, unless the referee in front of the secretary would invite me to offer my opinion. I'm there to assist him, and it's kind of his game, and I'm trying to make his game and his club marks and his observer marks and whatever else as positive as possible. And I don't want to kind of overstep my role to adversely affect that. So I just think, as an assistant, in terms of a referee's club marks, just wait till I'm invited to offer an opinion, and if not, just kind of keep myself to myself.
Yeah, no, good points. And obviously that differs the higher up you go when there's more marks variance. And I can see Martin seeing both sides of the story here. Joe, final one before we move on to the next slide.
So the view of club secretaries, which you've got there, I suppose has come from both of your talks with the two example guys.
Yeah.
Did you believe them?
Yeah, it was. To be fair, the conversations we had were very open, very honest. Because you can always tell when someone's trying to twist your arm.
What I can see there is what they should be doing. So they're going to tell you what they should be doing, but are they doing it? I mean, are they using the breakdown of the referee spectrum that's provided to them in the league handbook to really provide them with to really give them the accurate numbers that they should be using per match to referee?
So linking into that, one of the areas they said is they have a mark in their head when they come away from the game, and the majority of the time, the criteria within that will fit within that mark they've given. Following that, there may be a slight adjustment in the mark, not a massive one, but say they come out with an overall of 80. Prior to that, they might then look at it and go, well, actually, their max control was maybe a 25. This area was a 30. And it might be sort of come out at an 81, 82 or 78, 79.
I don't think we should underestimate how seriously the secretaries take their jobs and how seriously they take their marking as well. I think some of them will take great pleasure in doing a professional job, and I think you should take the points on board, what they've come out with. Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the messages that we seem to get from them. They want to give an honest reflection back to the league and the FA about how that referee's performed, and hope that when we mark them that we're doing the same thing and not just banding an 8 in for every game or whatever it may be. Obviously, the quota that we covered was 2 out of a large majority of clubs, and these 2 were very similar. I'm sure some clubs you'll go to won't be quite as precious over the marks that they give and quite so concise, and will adapt differently to this. So don't take this as an overall spectrum of all clubs that you will visit. It is a very small snapshot to give you an idea of how clubs do work, so that when you're going into your next games, you can hopefully take these on board into that and that environment. But without pushing on, going back over old stuff too much, Martin, sorry, I'll let you crack on.
So what's the last slide for this bit, for the conversation we had with the secretaries, was they don't take consideration in correspondence content prior to match day. So all the stuff we do around admin, bits and bobs, they don't take that into consideration too much. But please don't leave yourself wanting and not send your confirmations back. They will look and they do go back to referees and assistant referees if they haven't confirmed the fixture. All they're interested in when that MOAS ping comes through or the county appoint the officials is that they've got 3 confirmation emails back when they've sent out 3. So with that, please don't be the one that they have to chase. Let it be another county's referee, to be fair. Get your admin done, get your homework done, happy days, tick that box, done, move on to the next one. They'll see the same referees. So out of 20 home games, they'll probably see the same 7 or 8 referees across the season. So they will have an opinion of you, because you probably will go back. I know I've gone back to clubs before and they've gone, good to see you back, or oh great, we've got you again. Don't all laugh at once, please. So yeah, they will see the same 6, 7, 8 referees throughout the season, unless they go to away games. They'll see different referees from different areas. So they'll have an opinion before they even see you at the ground. They'll see you come up on MOAS or on the county websites, and they'll know you. They'll know what they're doing, and they will do their homework on you as well. So that leads me on to the next point: is it your first visit to the club? Was there an issue the last time, if you've been before, and have you just been promoted? So again, linking into that, we should do our homework as match officials on the 2 teams, managers, whoever that may be, clubs as well, just to get that rapport going, get that conversation flowing with the secretaries. But also the secretaries will do their homework on the match official team. So please don't think that they send out the email and they pack the laptop away or turn the computer off, because they don't. It's been proven by the secretaries and the two we've spoken to, they do the homework. So again, it's not tit for tat, and it's just ammunition that you have to have in the back of your head to say that I've done my homework on the clubs, I've done my homework on the secretary, they're going to do the homework on us. So again, use that as a tool for you guys when you're going out, and the match referee and the boss in the middle, have that in your armoury for your match official team. So right, these guys have done the homework. Have we done a homework? Have we got ammunition in our trunk to use? So impressions. Impressions are easy to lower. So it's more difficult for the secretaries to forget bad moments, and they'll easily lower your mark if they can't forget them. Now, I allude back to having that discussion with them, an open and honest discussion over hospitality. It don't have to be long-winded. It could be 2 or 3 minutes. Any questions? Do you have anything for me from the game? And that's then the impression of you're easily approachable. You've approached them, so that's given them a bit of time to go, oh, actually, yeah, he's been a fairly decent guy, girl, whoever it may be. And you're going to approach them to give your impressions and your thoughts on the decisions you've made, if there is any. If there is any contentious ones, you can explain them. So how do you lead your team? So I'm looking into for this one. I'm trying to get you guys to think about engagement and inclusion with all members of the match official team. Now, the higher up you go, you'll be invited onto FA courses. I've recently done one, inclusion, so this is where this comes from. Engagement and inclusion with your whole match official team. So if you are the match referee, involve everybody. Make sure you're all singing off the same hymn sheet. Make sure they feel welcome. They're getting involved, not just in the game, but pre-match, post-match, half-time, whatever it may be. Everybody will have their own way of dealing with their team. Some will bring music into the change rooms. I certainly know I did. Somebody will have a laugh and a joke, and they'll say, right, bring 3 jokes into the change room. Well, as long as they're fairly above board, they'll have jokes. And some will have a singing competition in the show. I've been with referees, they've gone, right, I'm going to start off with a song, and everybody's got to carry on the line out of the song. And it's just including and engaging in your match official team. With that said, the secretaries will look at you guys bonding as much as you are doing the job on the field of play. Because if you don't bond, first of all, what impression does that give the secretaries when they're marking you on your performances? If you're not bonding beforehand, how are you going to do it on the field of play? Again, as Sam's alluded to, they try not to use the referees to utilise the final mark for the referee. The assistant referee job is completely different to the referee in the middle, and the referee will mark the assistants. It's not for the club secretaries to mark the assistants, so they don't take assistants into consideration at all. I asked the secretaries, do you ask questions of the assistant referee if there's a decision that they've given? And they tend not to. They tend to go through the referee and go, well, actually, this decision on the 17th minute cost us a goal because it should have been offside. What's your thoughts? And then the referee will then have to ask, and they'll go, actually, this is my point of view, but actually, can I bring my assistant in? And then the match referee will ask the assistant for their point of view and their thought process on it. They're the best placed match official at the end of the day. They are giving the decision of offside. So that's that one. So they don't tend to counter the assistant referee's performance into that. As the match referee, they expect you to manage the manageables and discipline the unmanageables. So again, referring back to Steve's earlier comment, if it's a caution in the first minute, it's a caution in the 95th minute. If he's on a second, if there's a second caution, do it. Don't leave yourself with no ammunition, no shield for them to go, well, you didn't do it then, and you should have sent him off, and we probably could have won the game, and you didn't do it there either. So there goes your club mark. And it's an easy one to do. Laws of the game. Application of law is vital. Moving on from that, build a rapport. Build a rapport. However you do it, use your charm and charisma. Build a rapport with the club secretaries. Even if it is in that first email confirmation back to them, I hope you're well. asking a question like that. So I hope you're well. You don't know. You're asking a question of them. So when they get to the ground and they meet you for the first time or the 100th time, they'll go, "He's actually asked me if I'm all right." Start building that rapport, even from the first admin email that you send back, or other emails if there's problems with pitch inspection, stuff like that, or kit colours and clashes. Just try and build that rapport up. And again, like we spoke before, little black book, holidays, family, where they've been, what other clubs have they seen. It doesn't all have to be about football. But when we cross that white line, like Steve says, our focus changes then from being effectively friendly, but to doing a job. You have to be friendly, but let's get the job done as well. For level 3s, FA competitions, so FA Cup, FA Trophy, FA Vars. Your admin with this has got to be bang on. Leaving MOAS to Monday and Tuesday after the Saturday game day has an adverse effect. Secretaries come out and said this, that we don't want to be hanging around for the referee to hit that confirm button. So all the wheels and the cogs will turn in the MOAS system for them to do their report on you guys and your performances. If, like me, you're out in the car park, if you've got 2 minutes, just hit it on your smartphone, confirm the game. That leaves nobody in any question that you've done your admin. Then if you want to put in your reports later when you get home, fine. The next day, Sunday, happy days. But please don't leave them going, well, I'm going to take a mark off for that and marks off for that and marks off for that because his admin's terrible. So please, I can't bang on enough. Admin has got to come first, because without admin, you don't get to the game.
One of the big points they made about that as well was if there's a big decision that they're reviewing or playing through in their mind, by you leaving it until that Monday and Tuesday, they've got far more time to contemplate and come to a conclusion that doesn't necessarily agree with what you've told them after the game. So by leaving it much later can have that adverse effect in the marking, because their viewpoint of that incident has probably changed over the 48, 72 hours that you've left. I think we've all been guilty of in the past of potentially leaving MOAS open in those situations because, well, they might forget about it. Let's be honest, they're not going to forget about the decision. They're only going to sort of have that negative impact on that. So get it done. They can put their mark in as they see fit. If they want to review the highlights themselves, they can do it in their own time, but at least you've made it open for them to be able to do what they need to do.
And just the final point on there is incorrect discipline submissions. If we caution incorrectly or don't take a name down, doing our job as we should do, when we put it into MOAS and we do the admin, how is that going to have an impact on the decisions and marks that we get, the decisions of the club secretaries and the marks are going to give us on incorrect submissions? If that goes through to the club secretaries from the county, they're going to bat it straight back and go, well, he wasn't cautioned. So just dot your I's, cross your T's. All admin has got to be squared away and make sure it's right. Because again, that impression of he can't then do his job properly on the field of play and he can't get his admin right, well, what hope have you got with the club secretaries? Okay, any questions so far on that?
No, perfect. We'll move on to the next section. So, conscious of time, so we will flick through this one fairly quickly, to be fair, because we said it would be about an hour to an hour and a half, and we've been an hour and a half already. So, we're going to look at briefly what can you control and what can't you control from those areas there. So, does anyone want to fire any points out? Or we all falling asleep from Martin's voice?
Well, as the first uncontrollable, it's the sour grapes when they just want to punish you for making a decision they don't like.
How can we then control that? What can we do to turn that from an uncontrollable into a controllable?
Don't make decisions they don't like.
Or
get the key decisions right.
Yeah, you can either get decisions right or take the time to discuss with them and understand their viewpoints and share your viewpoint. But yeah, get those decisions right in the first place. Get yourself in that position where you can give an accurate decision. can avoid that situation. Obviously, their viewpoint on a certain decision is always going to be different. So take the time to discuss it, explain it, understand their view, appreciate their view. Sometimes we can give our view and not appreciate where they're coming from. Can we appreciate it a little bit more? Anything else?
Your admin's controllable.
Yeah, good. Administration. Yeah. Anything else?
The double standards in terms of, like they were saying, changing the way you are refereeing when there's an assessor there, just referee the same regardless of if there's an assessor there or not, or observer, sorry.
Yeah, good.
Asking for feedback. That's controllable.
Secretary's emotions, uncontrollable.
Good one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. We don't know what might happen.
It's emotions across the patch, isn't it? It's everyone's emotions, really, not just the secretaries, because it's the players as well. You're not going to be able to control that.
No, definitely. And sometimes we may have to make decisions based on players' emotions as well that might affect a secretary's emotions with that as well at the same time. Yeah, good.
Previous experiences are uncontrollable.
Can they be though?
Well, you can't change it once it's happened.
Experiences. Yeah, but if we get these controllable ones right, can that have a positive impact?
Yeah, of course.
So
Once
I think
it's
that
done,
probably
it's done,
covers
right?
both, to be fair. Probably a slight controllable and uncontrollable. Any final thoughts?
How about our emotions, guys? Can we control our emotions? We're saying about the secretaries of players and the managers. Can we do it for ourselves? Have a think about that when you next go to a game. Because we've come off the field of play after 90 minutes and we're buzzing or we're hyped up, but we need to control them emotions to then have them open and honest discussions.
A lot of, I mean, we'll leave it there on that topic, but I take it away and have a think in your own time. And if you think of an uncontrollable, try and think about how we can turn that into a controllable within ourselves. There'll be things that we definitely can't control, and whatever we do won't change that. But there'll be ways in a game that if we can get the situation right, it can turn an uncontrollable situation into a controllable, depending on how we look at it and how we take that on board. So moving forward, like I've said, we'll get this circulated to everyone as well, but understand your audience, understand what they expect in their viewpoints, take on board what feedback they provide, what their expectations are. Find out before the game whether it is going to be the secretary that you meet, because sometimes there'll be a secretary that does all the correspondence, but there'll be someone else on the day that you liaise with and contact and speak to and have that match day relationship with. Where are they going to be found? Where can I introduce myself? Where can we build that relationship from? They might not always be where you expect them to be, or might not be the first person greeting you. So try and find out where they're going to be to understand and build that relationship. Don't be afraid to discuss those decisions. If there's a decision that they don't necessarily agree with, one of the key points they mentioned and both secretaries took out is we're not going to agree with every decision, but if we can understand where the referee has come from and how that decision came about, then we can go into it with a different mindset and we appreciate it a bit more. It's not always going to be a case of agreeing and disagreeing between each other. There is that appreciation value and that understanding value. And they both said that if a referee takes their time to discuss the decision, share their viewpoints on it, we appreciate where they come from and they appreciate where we come from. It does have a positive impact on that mark because they can see why you came to that conclusion. However, try not to force that point too much because their view is going to be different and they may come from it from a strong position as it is. If they've got the benefits of highlights after the game, then obviously they're going to use that alongside of what you've gone through and said. Work with your colleagues, i.e. not just the guys you're going to be on girls you're going to be working with on the day, but was one of you there the week before or had that team the week before or 2 weeks before? What's happened? What can we get from that secretary? I.e. it might be a case of, well, Joe was there 2 weeks ago, I'm there this week. Joe, anything happened? Secretary, was there any of interest that I might want to discuss? Have they started playing in the bands? What are they into? Have they been on holiday? Small things like that. Obviously, a little bit more difficult at the moment with COVID, but there'll be situations there that you can still discuss how they learn a new skill during lockdown, situations like that. utilise them, because it gives you a bit of an insight before you go, and that secretary can go, oh, how do they know that? They know what they're doing, they're understanding, they're taking their time to do the research and understand where we're all coming from. At the same time, we touched upon earlier about going in there and asking the right questions and starting with the right statements. We don't want to go into the club secretary that hasn't won a game all season and ask them how the season, because straight away that's putting you on the back foot. So do your research on how they're getting on. Did they have a good result last week? And you bring that up and sort of discuss that around that. Again, don't bring it up that there's been a couple of confrontational situations or they've had a high degree of caution counts or something like that, because you might open a can of worms that you can't get yourself out of. Try and understand as well from other referees whether they've got any pet hates. So did they ask any questions after the game regarding a decision that has cropped up a couple of times, and you'll know the more you go to it. Secretaries look for certain aspects of a referee's performance exactly the same as observers do. So the research that we all do, and I know you all do regarding observers, can translate through to secretaries as well, and using the same ideas and the same questions that you ask each other. Has anyone got any questions on anything we've touched upon tonight so far? Some of you may think that this is how you thought it was in the first place, which is absolutely fine. And we understand that sometimes that you could do all of this and you could come across as fantastic, and sometimes clubs just mark low. And I'm sure you can all think of clubs where they might have a reputation as a low marker. We're doing some work at the moment with the Eastern Counties League locally to highlight those clubs that are of a lower marking standard, to try and increase their mark and help clubs develop and support that further. So there are work that we're doing with clubs alongside yourselves as well to try and level out and meet that middle ground a bit better. Has anyone got any questions? Go on, Joe.
I've asked this question before to other people, and I don't know whether you have an opinion or some insights, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. And it's been a long time since I've been in a promotion situation, so things might have changed too. To my understanding right now, 5 to 4 is not based on club marks. Stop me at any point, by the way.
Yeah,
right.
So I'll stop you on that one first of all. So 5 to 4, so they've changed the criteria this year, you only need 4 observations. However, if you only achieve 3, you need to be in the top 50% for club marks. So for the 5 to 4 candidates, this is still important, because depending on how the season goes and the length of time, we may have to only provide 3 observations depending on the availability of fixtures in themselves.
Okay. I'm going to take a punt and say that 9 times I'm going to get most referees the amount of observations that they need.
Yeah.
Then when you get to 4 to 3, we are effectively a 50-50 split on observations and club marks.
Yeah.
And then when you get to 3 and you're going on to 2 or 2A or 2B or whatever it is, Martin, I'm calling on your experience a tiny bit here. It then becomes a bit of a 70-30 split. Ballparking.
Yeah, it is. It's
Why?
very.
We go from 0 to 50-50 to 70-30.
Yeah.
Like, why?
It's basic because at step 1 level, it is basically the more they look at the observer reports, because it's more of a grounding for your performance to be promoted to national group. So that's where they're looking at for that one. So club marks do have a small impact, but not a massive one, if that answers your question. It's more
I think a lot of it,
technical performance and abilities as the higher you got the pyramid.
I think a lot of it as well has a part in that the higher you go, the more often you are observed. So a level 3 will be observed far more than a level 4. A level 2B would be observed far more than a level 3. And if you're observed more, you're getting a better understanding from observers and a better rationale of marks throughout the season. At level 4, it's probably 50-50, because if you're only doing 10 games, you're getting 5 observations, so on and so forth. And it's a very small, in the grand scheme of things, capture of that experience. Whether that will change, who knows? We've just got to work with it as it is. And look, if you can get your club marks in gear, that's not something to worry about really too much, and just take each game as it comes and work from it from there.
Sure.
I think from my point of view, like allowing a referee's promotion to be dictated by clubs is kind of, or not dictated by, but certainly contributed to by clubs is kind of, it can be quite a dangerous thing for several reasons, because you get regional variations in how clubs mark. So different parts of the country will either statistically mark higher or lower than others. So that impacts on things. You've got the level of objectivity in the process, the fact that they can carry baggage from one game to another and then punish you for the last time you were there. And, there's all kinds of dangers and perils to, allowing a vested interest to have a deciding factor.
There is, but unfortunately, that's how the system's set out. And as much as we try and make that change away from club marks to observers, because you're not being observed on the majority of games or all of your games, and there is that impact. At the same time, observers can wrongly, well, their marks change throughout the country as well. Obviously, you're only getting a snapshot based on your league.
There aren't even statistical measures put in place to say throw out marks that massively don't fit your pattern of performance. But then when you're doing simple averaging, that can be really quite harmful. Is if you do say 20 games in a season and all of your marks are around about the 80, bar 2 that are at 40, that pulls you down a long way.
The best thing I can say about this is system's not changing, and we've got to deal with it how it is, and we can pick flaws with any system that is put in place. You can pick flaws with a system that takes out your lowest and your highest marks, and then takes your average from there. It's whichever way we go causes problems for someone else.
I think, Sam, if you're good enough, you'll go through. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Darren, I can see your hands up. Fire away.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we're getting a bit too political on this. Like, at the end of the day, that, like, Sam has very little influence over who gets observed by clubs and who doesn't and stuff like that. Ultimately, if you've got an opinion, lobby the guys at the top of the game and the referee managers of the game if you're really that passionate about it. But we're all set up on the same system. We're all justified by the same system. So we like it or lump it, basically.
Yeah. And let's not overcomplicate it like we've discussed a couple of times today. The system is the system. We can't change it no matter how much we try at the moment. Whether it'll change in future, who knows? But let's not focus too much on that. Let's focus on what we can actually do with that. So stretching away from sort of that aspect and moving on to how it's going to work for the rest of the season, as I've touched upon already, we'll have bi-monthly meetings. So our next meeting will be in January, and we're going to follow a pattern of the third Monday of that month as well. So the next one will be on the 18th of January. It's up to you whether a 6:30 start is appropriate or whether a 7 would be better. We've gone with 6:30 because there's no travelling times. It gets us finished normally a bit earlier, but we're touching on for 2 hours here. So share those thoughts with you through your coaches or direct to me as well, and we'll plan that around that. The live majority session that Neil Hare is running based around managing players and non-players is going to be a really beneficial session. So get yourself booked onto that as well. That's going to be through Teams, and again, will last for around an hour to an hour and a half. As I touched upon with your coaches, use them or lose them. It's as simple as that. There's plenty of people out there that can benefit from a coaching environment. So make use of them 100%. If you have any concerns with your coach, please don't be afraid to come to me, but I can't imagine that's going to take place at all. FA have removed access to our Hive system, which is brilliant because that was a tool there that was really useful. They are developing their own, but at present we don't have access to that. So as such, we've set up a private Facebook group for yourselves. Some of you have had invites for that already because I've been able to find you through the CAMS FA referees page. If you search for CAMS Core 2020-2021, you'll be able to request access to that group and we'll get you in there. We're going to throw instances in there, video clips, use it as a discussion platform for yourselves to share things that have happened in your games as a learning platform. Similar to how we've used Hive in the past, but in a far more interactive way. I think Facebook is a good tool because everyone's on it. Everyone uses it on a daily basis, I'm sure. You can throw content in there yourselves. The coaches can throw content in. We can throw in questions and pose ideas to you as well. The slide deck and the recording of this session will be sent out by Wednesday, depending on the speed of my upload onto YouTube earlier in the week. One thing that's also worth us knowing is what you want us to cover in our sessions. We've got an idea of where we want to go with this, but we don't want to cover topics that you don't feel are relevant for your own development. So take your time to get those thoughts across to your coach so that they can share those with us. Obviously, we've got 3 meetings in January, March and May. But alongside that, if we get enough requests for certain content, say if we get 6 or 7 different requests on different content, then we're not afraid to put more sessions on, whether they be live or even pre-recorded sessions that we can circulate to you in alternate months or whenever necessary to cover that content and give you the development as you need. We're happy to cover as much as you need for your own progression in order you to progress and become better referees, as long as you engage and give back what we're putting back in as a workforce. So if you're sat there thinking, I need help with all of this, put it forward. We'll put the sessions together. We'll share it as a group, because I'm sure if one person's thinking of one thing, others are thinking of the other. Sort of linking into that, obviously a big thing at the moment, whilst trying to sort of maintain fitness whilst in lockdown. Me and Martin have sat down today, and Martin's going to pull off all of his PGMOL fitness sessions, and we'll get them circulated in due course as well to you as well, so you've got a basic idea and a rough idea of where you can go with that, and they'll be staged into 3 or 4 different levels, so you can sort of challenge yourself and progress with that as well. Facebook group should look like that when you come to it. Jake, you are our poster boy for now. If we get some better photos, though, I will quickly remove you. So don't get too confident with being on there. So get yourselves involved in that. Share ideas, share videos. If you see a video or an incident take place, don't be afraid to chuck that video in there and use it as a learning curve for everyone. We'll come back with a definitive answer at some point on that as well. Has anyone got any final questions or comments before we wrap up tonight? No. Finally, again, just want to thank all the coaches for offering their time this season to help improve you all as well, particularly alongside that, obviously, Ian, Mitchell and Kev Seckinson, who are coming in from further afield to help and support our guys, which is fantastic and hopefully really useful. We've also got Roger Coxhead, who I've neglected to mention. Roger's not on this clip, but you'll see the video. Roger's come over and is helping support a couple of others as well from Huntington. So it's nice to have some outside influence on that, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to discuss anything with you in meetings or outside of meetings as well. So thank you all very much for that. Like I say, get yourselves involved, use as much as you can, use it or lose it. We've got a list of people there that I'm sure can come in and take your place, as brutal as it may sound, should you not wish to engage too much. Thank you all for your time. Apologies we overran slightly, but like I always say, I never apologise when we're covering something important for your development. I'd rather overrun than not cover something in the detail you need. Share those ideas with your coaches on what you want covering, and we'll get that content in there. Have a good rest of your evening, and I will see you all on Thursday, the 3rd of December, on the session with Neil. Thank you all very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.